Welcome back to Conservative Conversations. I'm your host, Reid.
And I'm Frank.
Today we're going to be talking about new rules affecting home loan borrowers, further banking collapses, Joe Biden's back in, and Tucker Carlson's out. So let's talk about it. And before we get started, listeners, I want to remind you to subscribe on your favorite podcast platform and be sure to leave a rating and review. You can also comment, like, and subscribe on our YouTube channel. We would appreciate that. And our first topic for today is going to be a new rule from the Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. I forget their official agency title, but something under the Federal Housing Authority, I believe, or maybe it's the Federal Home Loan Association, something like that. But anyway, they have this loan level price adjustment matrix, which from a couple of different articles I have found is it's like an upfront fee based on different factors such as a borrower's credit rating and the size of their down payment. The fees are typically converted to percentage points that alter the buyer's mortgage rate. And I had a hard time finding exactly what the purpose of these fees are, but I did find one quote from a Yahoo Finance article that says, according to media reports, the new LLPA is an amount of fees imposed on borrowers with high credit in a way to subsidize, as a way of subsidizing those with low credit scores. And the goal is to support federal initiatives to increase affordable housing across the country. And under the new rules, high credit buyers with credit scores ranging from 680 to above 780 will see a spike in their mortgage cost on average of about $40 a month. And those with high credit scores that also place 15 to 20% of a down payment on their home could face a slightly higher cost. And
say that last part again about the down payments.
Those with higher credit scores that also put down a higher down payment, like 15 to 20%, could see even higher costs. But supposedly, the purpose, especially if you look at the little quote from the Yahoo Finance I just mentioned, the increased fees to those with higher credit is supposed to help subsidize and provide more affordable housing to people. So it's one of their new equity initiatives, but in this case, it's not the good kind of equity that you would eventually get from your home. It's the racial equity that this administration is fond of pushing for. And one of the things that immediately came to my mind when I first heard about this is, what about those people of color who have good credit? This affects them. They're going to have to pay the higher costs if they happen to have good credit and are seeking to buy a new home. And even it still has even like more knock-on effects to that, because what if somebody wants to buy a new home and rent it out to somebody, and the people that
part is a gainful activity,
right? Yeah. And even if if somebody buys a house to rent it out, they're likely going to pass that cost on to the renter. And what if the renters happen to be people of color? That's going to affect them having to pay a higher cost for their living.
Right.
So it doesn't really make any sense. And we've seen something similar to this before, not
Yes,
that
we
long
have.
ago,
That's what I have in my notes that I've been taking.
right?
A couple of things.
Where they're making it easier for those who are, less creditworthy to borrow houses, or not houses, but borrow money for houses they might not be able to pay back.
Right,
And,
like the housing bubble thing.
right, and in turn, penalizing those who are doing the correct thing. And it comes on top of several reports that the housing market is still struggling, especially entering the spring buying season, in which these new rules actually take place on May 1st, which is today as we're recording. So all new loans, this only affects new loans originating from today. And also, to be fair, I believe in at least one of the articles I have for information on this, it does say that those with low credit scores still technically pay a higher cost for their loans, but the new policies, trying to lower the gap between what those with good credit pay and those with lower credit pay.
Right.
And I don't think it's a good move. It'll, like I said a little bit ago, certainly have like domino effects, knock-on effects further down the line. And it's just, as I mentioned, I believe in our last episode, we're sort of talking about the economy and the banks. And I think this is just going to, one of those, another elements that's going to add to it in a negative way to the economy.
Well, and if you don't mind me jumping in,
Sure, go
I
for
see
it.
a lot of parallels with this. I mean, I find this very interesting, what you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Super interesting, actually. I come from a tax background. I worked in tax for a little bit. And I see parallels there, especially with the structuring. And there's also other implications to this as well, other than just the fact that it's been tried before. But it's almost like they're doing this based off of, if anybody's ever worked in the tax field, the earned income credit. The earned income credit's just like this, where, well, and there's also another comparison. Like I said, there's other implications as well. But it's like, have you ever heard of a sliding scale in the doctor's office? Well, that's what this price adjustment matrix sounds like to me. Just another way to say that there's a matrix of numbers.
Right.
Because that's a matrix is just a set. You might call it a set of numbers. And, it's almost like a chart in a way. It works like a chart because on the left-hand side, the left, x-axis, it's something quantifiable.
Right.
And on the y-axis, something else quantifiable. And you see, it goes up and down.
Right.
Income, credit. In this case, it's going to be credit score or whatever. I don't know. But in the EIC tables, it's earned income is what you're talking about. And there are different categories for how many children you have, and if you have no children or whatever, there's a category for everything, and you just see where the incomes line up and where the credit meets your income or threshold for what category you're in. Right? Well, there's something else. It's also a tax thing, but this one really is interesting to me to bring up in relation. If you remember the Obamacare, the tax credit that they set up, they set up the exchanges and they did this, I can't remember what it's called, some kind of premium tax credit, and they do a calculation to see essentially for what, what do they call it? For whatever percentage of the, what do they call it? If you're poor, poverty guideline that you meet or whatever, this is the amount that you should be being charged for health insurance. And if you can only afford X, then they will subsidize with Y.
Right.
And you talked about this too, the subsidy aspect of this. That's the really interesting thing that comes in. Because we've also already seen this done with our healthcare. They're doing this now where they give this advanced premium tax credit out. And you have to do this calculation to see, well, did they subsidize you too much through the months? You have to always be weighing, well, the government thought I was going to make 36,000 because that's what I did last year, but this year I actually only made 34. So then they rebalance it and they say, oh, well, we actually owe you, your premium should have been $3 cheaper per month.
Mm-hmm.
And so they give you a little bit back at the end of the year because, so I just find that interesting because now you're going to be seeing it like with, and they talk about housing,
mm-hmm.
but you're going to see it bubble over into other things surely too. I mean, think about credit cards.
Right.
We've seen that, it used to be the minimum that they would bill you for 10% was your minimum payment, 10% of whatever your outstanding balance was. But they changed that in the legal code so that you had these teeny tiny little minimum payments that you had to make, and you could keep these large balances. You could keep spending.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't have to adhere to 10%. Imagine if you had to pay 10%. That was your minimum every time you had to make a payment.
Yeah. Yeah. I definitely see how this could, work its way into other fields.
Well, yeah, I mean, if they're just going to basically subsidize
mm-hmm.
what you pay on your mortgage, why not subsidize what you pay on your credit card? Why not subsidize what you pay, you know what I mean, on any other type of loan? The student loans, they already kind of do that.
Right.
I mean, it's like, I think you'll see it's interesting, but it bleeds sort of over into another thing we're going to talk about and we have talked about before.
Yeah. Well, I'll just finish with wanting to say that this is just a good example of, in the left's mission of equity, they do things that actually end up harming the same people that they're trying to help, and more. They gotta crack a few eggs and make an omelet.
Yep.
But as you hinted at, that kind of leads us to our next topic, the sort of the banking area and loans and stuff.
Yes, and into material that we've covered before.
Right.
I think just on our last segment, the 50th episode, we got into this a little, talking about the expansion of the FDIC
mm-hmm.
and everything like that. Well, I don't know if you would have seen this headline or if most people would have, but there just has been another bank failure. Have you heard about this?
Yeah.
It's the First Republic
Bank.
Yeah,
that's it, yeah.
They're based in San Francisco.
Mm-hmm.
They have 84 branches in 8 states. And they just got taken over by the FDIC. And all of their assets, this is what's just been released today,
right.
The last things I saw, but all of their assets have been sold over to JP Morgan Chase, which was alluded to in some of the reporting, that I've looked into and studied, like for the last time we went on air and for this time. There have been indications that a lot of these small fry banks, if you will, are going to be selling their assets over.
Right.
That there is sort of a run on the banks happening right now, and some of the smaller fish are getting eaten by the bigger fish, and that's why there's talk of expansion of the FDIC and stuff like that, and expanding the amount of deposits that we're going to insure.
Right.
Because we want to inject calmness into the very unsettled markets right now. And so I just find that interesting because we have talked about it before. There's yet another one, another bank failure.
Mm-hmm.
Since some of this news has been coming out, and maybe even, I don't know exactly when it started, you often find things in this that the CEOs sold their stock ahead of time, conveniently, and the boards, they all cashed out and everything. But the stock is down 90%. And the first quarter is over, and according to their reporting, they're down. They've seen $100 billion decline in deposits just in the first quarter. So it's also interesting, just to see what was out there. I Googled to see if there was a list of other banks that might be, hearing their death knell soon, or if other people have conjectured anything, put anything out there. And I saw that there's already 2 banks, or 2 sort of asset companies, asset entities that are sort of in trouble. And one of them is called Silvergate Capital Corp, and another one's called Credit Suisse. Have you heard of that? Because I feel like I've heard of that too, and they're in trouble.
They're over in Europe, I believe, Switzerland maybe.
So I just find it, those are the only two that really came up that I felt like mentioning, that I felt like have sources that are out there that have actually been talked about. They're in some kind of trouble, or I wouldn't be saying this right now. But I feel like there's going to be more.
Right, yeah.
And there's been some really interesting things on this. I saw just part of the same reporting. I mean, all of this really comes from the same source, as the viewers will be able to see it. The links will be in the description as usual. But there's a quote that I found particularly interesting in this source that says that if only half of uninsured depositors. Now, what would that mean? Uninsured depositors. That would mean people above the $250,000 limit, right? Because they're not going to be insured.
Right.
Okay. So if only half of the really rich people, that's how I read this, if only half of the uninsured depositors decide to withdraw, almost 190 banks are at a potential risk of impairment to insured depositors. So we're just talking about half.
Right.
Half of depositors. If the rich half of the depositors take all their money out, the insured people are going to be at risk, according to, now I'm not sure the source, but it's a good enough source to quote. And it is an interesting concept, right? You think they have the more money, the most money, of course. But if you see the hypocrisy of this, and that's why I would bring it up, me being Frank, they can't even insure the FDIC.
Right.
If you read this statement for what it says right here point blank that they can't even insure the FDIC as it stands. So why would we balloon it to include the rich people too? Do you see what I'm saying? The hypocrisy of the whole thing. And on that, here's my redemption point, okay? I feel like I've been agreed with. According to the same article, it says, the House Republicans, because we have the House, they are calling for an end to banking bailouts and oppose, quote, any universal guarantee on bank deposits over the current limit. Amen.
Right.
Because you can read the writing on the wall. That's why they want to do all this. They want to cover the rich people who are going to screw the poor people.
Right. It makes sense.
The whole system's on the verge of collapse. And the Treasury's they've got everybody's back.
That's what they want you to think.
Yep. But so I found that very interesting. Some very interesting reporting. The links, are provided. I would have you check them out. I would encourage you to do so. It's very interesting. Then you hear Janet Yellen sit there and say, there's no problem. Everything's stable.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm sure we'll find out more because first quarter earning calls are coming around at this time. And I'm sure that's going to help shed some light on how things have been going and what these companies think it's going to look like in the future because they have to give their next quarter projections.
Yeah.
So, I think it's still going to be a bumpy road for the economy. Like I've already mentioned, there's a bunch of different factors that are all added up, and it's probably not going to get any better in the near term, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, just tangentially related, I saw a headline that said gas prices are probably going to be higher this summer.
Yeah.
Because there's not as much... the headline said something like Biden doesn't have as many options on the table or as much wiggle room as he's had before on what these prices are going to be set at.
Well, that makes sense because he's not focused on producing any at home, and he's, from what it seems, has upset the Saudis, and they're going to be raising prices.
It'll be interesting to see how the summer shakes out.
Yep, definitely. And that moves us to our next topic. Speaking of Joe Biden, just recently he has announced his reelection campaign. Yay!
What?
What? I was
Reelected? I thought,
yeah, his reelection campaign.
isn't he like 100?
Almost. He's what, 80 right now? So yeah, he's closer to 100 than he is.
Not.
Yeah, not exactly. Right?
Wow. Can't
But,
believe it.
Yeah, he put out a roughly 3-minute long video. It was
Yeah, I saw it. It was pretty cheesy.
yeah, like
I'm not actually shocked. I just think it's
right,
shocking. It is shocking.
right.
He's going to be like the oldest president ever.
Yeah, and
Good job, Democrats.
yeah, exactly. He's
You need some brain dead loony to do your work for you. Ugh.
now that it's official, I can't see them trying to back anybody else for the nomination. I mean, I guess they still might. Who knows? But I don't know who they're going to replace him with.
Pelosi.
Oh my goodness.
Pelosi. The most hated woman in America.
Isn't she like older than him by like a couple years?
She's like 110.
Oh gosh.
She once rode a pterodactyl.
Oh really? She was the Flintstones next door neighbor.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. But yeah, I think he might try to do his hiding in the basement stunt again. He's not gonna go out on the trail so often. No big rallies.
Well, it got him elected the first time.
Right, exactly. Because even in this re-election video, I mean, from my understanding, there's no live footage of him. It's all been stuff that's been taped before, and you don't see him speaking. You hear him speaking, but it's all like voiceover. So they don't even want to show him in real action.
Of course not, because you know why? I mean, the Trump campaigns write themselves. All you have to do is have Joe Biden's voice, like a voiceover, like you're just saying. You remember how he said of Trump, he said, "Watch how he walks down ramps and I run upstairs."
Right. And then show him falling off his
and then
bike.
show him falling over and over
Yeah.
and over and over and over. And do it deadpan.
Right.
Dead serious. And just show him falling. No laugh reel. Nothing like that.
Right.
It's great.
And then just over the weekend as we're recording, they had the White House Correspondents' Dinner. And he was out there making jokes about him being old. I don't remember what he said, but, he's trying to play it off.
Yeah. And schmooze with all those people again. Because they weren't doing it for a couple of years, were they? I don't think they did it for a while.
That's possible, especially during COVID. I don't think they did.
I was going to say during Trump period, but yeah.
Yeah. I almost think that given his age, and that almost anybody on the Republican Party could beat him. I still think Trump would struggle because it's two old guys going against each other. One most people don't like, and the other most people don't pay attention to. I would actually even say that it'd be a long shot, but even old Vivek Ramaswamy would have a decent shot because
Now, who's that? Remind me.
he's the Indian guy who, I don't know if you've seen his recent clip when he was on talking to Don Lemon before Don Lemon got fired.
Huh, no.
Oh. But he's a younger Indian fellow. He's a pretty reasonable guy who's running for the Republican Party. But my point was that given that Biden's so old and not that likable, I think a young candidate could potentially beat him.
Well, I'll tell you, I think there's a guy who's about to drop his name in the hat. I don't know if you saw this headline, but Tim Scott's going to have a big announcement on
Tim Scott.
on the 24th or
Really?
something like that. Yeah, of this month.
Tim Scott's okay.
I just wonder how much of a chance he would have. And I will say this, I think he is the type of candidate that needs to be pushed and backed in the Republican Party going forward.
Right.
Candidates who are from the outside who, I mean, I think we're the true patchwork and the true quilt work.
Right.
And we will take anybody of a reasonable mind,
Mm-hmm.
And I think we need to show that more and reflect that, not just a harmony, but how it takes all types. It takes everything.
Well, I
to make
think
the
that
world
shows in the Republican field itself. How many, in 2016, that race, there was 17 candidates in the Republican Party, and I don't know how many there were on the Democrat side, but certainly not that many. And even in 2020, there were, a fair number, even though it was pretty much a foregone conclusion that it was
there's been
Trump.
People of lots of color, from lots of walks of life, different sexes, different businesses.
Right.
They've worked in government. They haven't worked in government. They've really made some good points. Some of them have really been fools.
Sure.
It's just like humans are human. You know?
We always seem to have the most variety and, actual diversity.
But I also really think it would be good for America to really have sort of, I don't really want to treat it with kid gloves, but I'd love to see a conservative Obama.
Right.
I don't know how else to put that.
Sure.
So.
Yeah, I kind of get what you're saying. He's, for what it's worth, Obama was a pretty charismatic person. He was able to win people over with his personality. He, charmed people.
Yes.
And
he broke barriers.
Right, exactly.
And I'd love to see it on our side. I'd love to see somebody break through that barrier.
Right.
On the conservative side and really have somebody like a Winsome Sears.
Oh, yeah, she'd be good.
I know. I know, and that's why I don't mind to say this, because I know what I mean. You know what I mean. I hope the listeners would know. We have you can go back and listen to our old podcasts. We've been doing this for a while now. And we covered Winsome Sears, for example. I saw her win. We covered it.
Yep.
These are the types of candidates and the types. So I'm really attracted to a Tim Scott.
Right.
That's why I just throw that out there. I think that's wonderful for our party. I think it'd be wonderful for America.
Yeah, I think Tim Scott would have a better shot than Nikki Haley. And it seems like Nikki Haley is trying to run possibly as Trump's vice president, from what other people are also thinking. Cause,
might be good. I don't know.
Well,
might be appealing. Let me say that.
Well, both of them, Trump and Nikki Haley, are kind of attacking Ron DeSantis from the left on the whole Disney issue. And I don't know the exact quote, but Nikki Haley used the phrase sanctimonious. She's not going to be sanctimonious about Disney coming to South Carolina or something like that. And Donald Trump likes to call Ron DeSantis Ron DeSanctimonious. So a few people think it seems a fairly choice word that she used there. But yeah, I think Tim Scott would be better than Nikki Haley. Then I also think Vivek Ramaswamy could probably be better.
Oh yeah,
than her.
Well, really, in a way, I don't know why, but you just made DeSantis go up in my book, because it almost makes him sound like he's got core values that Trump and Haley don't have.
Right, and I think that's part of what should be considered when it comes to the Republican primary. Because there are other things that Trump has come from the left on with DeSantis. It's Social Security.
Yeah.
Trump doesn't want to touch it at all. He's made the promise that he's not going to touch Social Security.
Well, you sort of can't, because it's a bought, sold, and how do you put it? Bought, sold, and believed lie. You can't. I mean, it'd be like popping a balloon to really talk about Social Security.
Well, I mean, I get that it's a tough issue to actually work on, but I don't see why, especially if you're running for a primary, that you're gonna not be conservative on that issue.
I think because on the Disney issue.
No, Social Security.
So will you state it again? Because what's your point again?
I was talking about how Donald Trump has attacked Ron DeSantis from the left on the Social Security issue. I gave that as another example.
Oh, okay.
Like Trump.
Well, then I would just agree with you and DeSantis again then, because you have to be realistic about that. And
Right.
I'm not one who's bought into the lie. So I don't want to be treated with kid gloves. Just because everybody wants to treat Social Security with kid gloves doesn't mean I want to be treated with kid gloves. I'd love to pop that balloon.
Right. I mean, from my understanding, Trump doesn't even want to raise the age, much less anything else. But
well, I totally hear you then.
right.
I mean, because you've inspired me, and I've only been I guess I've been very actively listening to you and talking back and everything, but I could just pick up from what you said right there. There was a dichotomy where they're kind of flip-flopping, and it doesn't even really matter on how you feel about Disney.
Sure.
But it's like, oh yeah, we'd bend over backwards to have Disney in North Carolina. We'd bend over backwards to work with Disney.
Right.
You almost hear that. Whereas DeSantis is saying, this has got to stop.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, and I think the elections have come to a point where we're no longer just voting for who's going to put more money back in our pockets, whether it's via lower taxes and decreased regulations, or if you're on the other side, by more subsidies or government handouts.
Yeah.
It's beyond stuff like that. We're dealing with issues of doctors mutilating children. Those are the kinds of things we're gonna have to start considering and voting on beyond just taxes.
And the Disney thing is more important than it seems, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's very interesting.
It is, and I think
Disney has a bad track record too.
Yeah. It definitely has had mixed opinions in the public eye over the past several decades.
Walt was no saint.
No. But to bring it back to Joe Biden announcing his reelection campaign, like I said, I think since he's done that, the Democrat Party's pretty much stuck with him. I still wouldn't be surprised if come, primary season next January, they try pushing somebody else out to get the nomination. But they're stuck with him, and I still think Trump has a tough time beating him. I don't think he's completely out of the count, like I said in the last episode. If he can focus on the comparison of the two administrations and not make it about himself, I think he might have a better shot. And then, as I said just a moment ago, I think any of the younger, well, not any, but a few of the younger Republican potential nominees would have a pretty good shot.
Well, time will tell.
Exactly. Because a lot can change between now and then.
I think it's interesting, if I can piggyback on to the next topic here. I think it's going to be interesting to see how the news is covered going forward. Not just in the next cycle, but you talk about the news in general now. I don't know if you saw, but a guy I know Tucker Carlson, and a network I know Fox News, just went their separate ways.
Yeah.
Did you hear about this? I'm sure.
Oh, yeah. Big deal.
Yeah, big deal.
Huge deal.
Huge deal. Well, what I find interesting is I had a thought pop into my head right away when I first ever heard this, saw this headline. It was a little bit of a shock to me, I'll say.
Yeah, me too.
I hadn't heard any whispers about it gonna happen. And then all of a sudden I saw a headline that said that it had happened.
Right.
So it was a little bit of a shock to me.
Well, it seems it probably was to Tucker, too, because I've seen a couple people play clips from his Friday show, because on his last show that he did, he said, "See you next week," or something like that to the effect. That he'd be back next week. Then Monday rolls around, Monday afternoon, he's out.
Right.
So yeah, it probably was somewhat of a surprise to him too.
Yes, I'm sure it probably was because, well, I mean, I don't know. I just sort of feel it in a way. It was definitely a surprise, a shock.
Yeah.
But I think it's also sort of interesting if you think about the totality of news and everything. And he was one of their biggest draws.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the biggest.
Well, let's not go there. I don't really
on that channel.
I'm sure he was. I'm not debating you. I just want to be a little bit more neutral. He was one of their biggest draws. But I want to say almost in general, the fact, we can be literal if you want. I just don't have the numbers, but I've seen that he's already drawing bigger crowds on his own than he was receiving when he was there.
Right. Yeah.
So, and we've seen other people. Megyn Kelly's an example. People have already done this, made a career out of just doing their own news commentary.
Right.
Just you might say for being has-beens, but they have to work actively at it.
Right,
It still is work. So,
right. Yeah, and I think, you use Megyn Kelly, she's a pretty good example. I don't know exactly how, I know she's doing well for herself with her show, but comparatively to when she was on Fox, I don't know all that.
Yeah, I don't know all that either.
Right. But I have a feeling that wherever Tucker goes, I don't think he's going to lose too much. Might even get bigger.
No, he is ready to get bigger. And this is part of what I'm saying is I think you're also going to see now, because he was one of that network's biggest draws, right? I think you're going to see a decline in that network. I think you maybe already have if you're paying attention. I would actually
say I think I have just recently, not even on their channel.
I know, but there's been lots of reporting of that fact too. But just saying, it depends on where you look, what you're looking at. But I'm telling you, going forward yet, there's going to be a further decline. There's going to be a decline in this channel. There's going to be a decline in what I would call corporate media, period. Overall, the whole blanket. This stuff is so gone.
Right.
And that's what we're going to see here is these people who own this media corporation, Fox News, whatever we're talking about. They're making themselves plain because you think, what are they saying? They're saying, we don't want Tucker's input on the next election. We don't want him giving the news. Right. In the next cycle. We don't want him to still be on air.
Right. We don't want him so much that we're going to sacrifice all the money we get from his viewership.
Yeah, we're going to die on this hill.
Yep.
And so, it's the birth, in a way, it's the birth of Tucker Carlson, I think.
Sure. Renaissance.
Yes. Hopefully. I wish him well.
Yeah,
I like Tucker. I don't know that he's the bee's knees and cat's pajamas, but he's pretty cool.
Yeah, well, he's definitely important.
He might be the cat's pajamas.
He's an important figure in, conservative commentary and media.
He has a wide platform. He has an active mind. I will say that I think he's very cerebral. I think he's an intelligent person.
Right.
I think he's got a good work ethic. I don't think he's lazy.
Right.
But I do think there's probably that tendency to fall into the same sort of money trap that it all ends up centered around. It all ends up around money, Am I getting paid to do this? We might all fall into that trap. Sure. I don't discredit him for it, but that's all that I see if I had to say anything.
Right.
But I think it's interesting they're really losing a gem because we've seen him do segments with people that other people wouldn't interview. We've seen him do segments on topics that other people don't really touch. They don't really try to drag into the mainstream. Other people, let's say the Laura Ingrams of the world, who knows? Other people who still have their jobs, let's say, they probably wouldn't take these risky, these risks that he has and that other people that he's interviewed, like Elon Musk, have. These types of... And I don't know if you remember, but he had just interviewed Elon Musk. I don't remember if it was on the Fox News, what would you call it, the late night Tucker. What was that one? He had a different... Good Morning with Tucker or something like that.
Tucker Carlson today.
All right. Well, I'm
Fox
all over
Nation
the map. But
streaming service,
Yeah, the Fox Nation.
Yeah.
So it might have been on that. It might have been on his channel. I don't remember. But he interviewed Elon Musk, and they were talking about the dangers of AI.
Right.
And there's been a lot of talk about that recently because I guess, they say that this open AI chat GPT, have you heard of that?
Yep.
just blowing up in popularity.
Yeah.
I heard the quote that it's writing poetry as good as humans. At least to the human who reads it.
Right.
They might consider it equal to another human's work or effort or whatever. But I saw that they are receiving about 100 million monthly active users to get these OpenAI chat GPT to do whatever, to talk to these people. And all these big companies, Microsoft, Google, Musk is supposed to come out with his own AI. They're all supposed to come out with their own AI.
Right.
Microsoft's introducing the new Bing. That's what they're calling it, the new Bing.
Right.
Because Bing sold so well.
Right, yeah.
The new Bing.
It's like new Coke.
New Coke.
Exactly.
Exactly. But it's just interesting. I mean, because so many people, Elon Musk, the co-founder of Apple, Steve Wozniak,
yep.
They've come out. They've talked about how dangerous this stuff is. And even there's some new material, I guess, new in the sense that people hadn't linked it with today's headlines yet. But it's now in the headlines that Stephen Hawking, before he died, he was talking about the dangers of AI. Somebody's gone back and linked that together, that there's all this negative stuff about the AI programs now, and it could be the death of humanity within 100 years, Hawking said.
Oh. Okay.
I know, but it's still, and they're all out there talking about it, though. Elon Musk, he just said it recently. That's the one I provided you the link to, and the people will have a link to. Musk is even talking about it, too, that it could be the deadliest thing we've ever created. Deadlier than the atom bomb kind of thing. I don't know that that's a direct quote, but he's saying scary, dangerous.
Right.
So I think it's interesting. I think that's interesting that there's been developments in this AI thing, that it's all of a sudden on everybody's lips. And I think it's sad and interesting that Tucker's gone and he's not going to be able to talk about the things we've been talking about. Well, not in the same sense, not on the same platform.
Right.
But it's interesting that they don't want him there.
Yeah. It almost seems like, Fox is moderating themselves or becoming more moderate, and before you know it, because at the same time, supposedly that's what CNN is doing, but in the other way. And how long until you flip back and forth between the two channels? It's the same point of view.
Good news, comrade.
Yep. It's
when you go to polls, you vote this way.
It's definitely interesting to see Fox make this big move, and it's be interesting to see where Tucker goes from here. Like we said, we hopefully he'll get bigger, and at least won't. He ain't going anywhere else. I
hope he'll continue to be good.
Right.
I think that matters too, because there's
sure.
a certain structure with a big name like Fox and a legal team like Fox. He sort of did have freedoms for a certain while.
Sure.
He was able to comport himself in a way that others might not necessarily have been able to comport themselves.
Right.
But I hope that he continues good luck and good work.
Yep, same here. I'm sure he'll make a home wherever he lands. And is that all we got?
That's all I really had.
That's pretty much all I got too. Thought that was a pretty good conversation. And listeners, if you enjoyed the conversation, please be sure to leave a rating and review wherever you listen to the podcast. Also, like, comment, and subscribe on the YouTube channel. And visit our website, contemporaryconservative.net, to check out more content there.
Remember to tell a friend about us or two. And as always, thanks for listening.